All right, and share my screen. So thank you so much for joining today for this interest session on the Winston-Salem Community Action Coalition, our VISTA program in the Office of Civic and Community Engagement. My name is Shelley Sizemore. I serve as the Director of Community Partnerships and co-director of the Winston-Salem Community Action Coalition. So we're going to do 5 things today. It's a meaty agenda because we want to make sure you know exactly what you're applying for when you apply for VISTA, because it is a particular it's a particular program. So we are going to explore the structure and goals of the VISTA project today, our project and being a VISTA in general. Sorry, I was getting a text from someone who wanted to join. Then we're going to talk more about VISTA members. We're going to talk about allowable tasks for VISTA members. We're going to talk more about what you should expect as a host site and a host site supervisor, and then share some next steps for applying. So the Winston-Salem Community Action Coalition is an AmeriCorps VISTA program sponsored by the Office of Civic and Community Engagement at Wake Forest University. It's a mouthful. It's important to say all those words though, because we are the largest AmeriCorps VISTA project in the state of North Carolina, but we are not the only AmeriCorps VISTA project in the state or in the country. So it's just important to me for you all to know that while we're excited that you're interested in our project and we welcome your application, we're not the only path to VISTA. So sites can apply, nonprofits can apply directly to AmeriCorps to host their own VISTA projects. In our project, we have 18 full year VISTA members. We have 1 VISTA leader because of the size of our project, and we have 28 summer associates. So full year VISTA members serve 35 to 40 hours a week for a full 12 months. The VISTA leader is a person who has served in the past, whether through our project or another national service project, that commits a second year and primarily functions to support the project through supporting the members. So our AmeriCorps VISTA leader, Katie Hildebrand, served last year at the Shalom Project and is now with us as VISTA leader, and she does a lot of work to support those 18 members and the various things that they may need. She also does a lot to work with me on making sure we're getting our reports in and writing all of the things that we have to write to stay in compliance with AmeriCorps. The project's co-directed by Dr. Marianne Majuka and myself. Dr. Majuka founded the project in 2016, and she serves as our executive director in the Office of Civic and Community Engagement. Oh, and both Marianne and I are alums of national service. So we both did AmeriCorps as a pretty pivotal development opportunity for ourselves when we, shortly after graduating from college. And so for us, we're just really passionate about national service because it was an on-ramp for us. So our specific project aligns with the economic empowerment focus area in AmeriCorps overall. VISTAs in general are dedicated towards reducing poverty. And so some of the ways that our project does that is that VISTAs work to increase access to housing, employment, education, healthcare, and nutritious meals. But they also generally focus on capacity building and sustainability for our project and for the host sites. And I'll talk more about how we define those things as the presentation continues. We have those 18 members that serve for 12 months, and that's primarily who we're going to talk about on this call. There's another call next week for hosting summer associates, if you're interested in that. The 18 members that serve full-time contribute to the goals of our project by performing activities like volunteer recruitment, training, program development, data collection, grant writing, fundraising, partnership development, and some other examples that I'll share later on. In addition to those full year members, we do host 28 summer associates, and they serve full time as well for 8 to 10 weeks in June and July. And so I have here a link just to our website that I will drop in the chat. It's telling me my connection is not private. Great. We'll just go back. There we go. So there's a link here to our website if you want to learn more about the particular host sites we work with now, or the particular members that we have serving, to get a better idea of who our members are. Please feel free to check that out. So this is kind of a older graphic from AmeriCorps, but they haven't updated it since they brought together the regional offices. And I just think it is helpful to partner sites to see kind of organizationally where we are. So AmeriCorps has 3 key branches. They're called NCCC, VISTA, and state, what are called state and national grants. So I already mentioned that VISTAs are specifically focused on anti-poverty. NCCC is, the way I've described it in the past, is like Service National Guard, because essentially they get deployed to different short-term direct service projects as teams in particular regions. State and national grants are similar to VISTAs in that it's typically one member serving with one organization, but state and national grantees do not have to be explicitly anti-poverty in focus. They can serve part-time, so less than full-time. VISTA members must serve full-time, and they can serve for less than 12 months. So it's variable projects, 3 to 10 months. And they do all kinds of different types of AmeriCorps work. There also is not as much of a discouragement or it's not really a ban, but a discouragement around direct service with state and national. Their members tend to do direct service. So there's no longer a state office for AmeriCorps. There's a regional hub in the Southeast, but everything else has remained largely the same. And I wanted to show this because if you look on the right-hand side, this is the characterization of the project that we have. So the little greenhouse would be AmeriCorps. These little purple houses would be, or no, the little greenhouse would be our office, the Office of Civic and Community Engagement. The little purple houses would be your organizations. You would be these orange folks as site supervisors, and then the blue folks would be your members. So we're there to provide support to all of our host sites, to provide support to site supervisors, but the day-to-day work of supervising the VISTA, and really a lot of the thought leadership around what the member will do is up to you as sites and site supervisors. So these are some of our current host sites. You'll notice that our host sites fit in a couple of different buckets. So the programmatic organizations tend to fit in to economic opportunity, education, equity, or health and food justice. And then in addition to that, we have a couple of sites like Neighbors for Better Neighborhoods and Hands-On Northwest North Carolina that are more capacity building sites. So those organizations are building kind of broad scale capacity for a lot of different small, medium, and large nonprofits in the region. And that's how they're building kind of the overall ecosystem's ability, nonprofit ecosystem's ability to serve low income individuals in Forsyth County and Winston-Salem. So the overall mission of VISTA, important things to remember are that VISTAs build capacity in nonprofit organizations and communities to help bring individuals and communities out of poverty. They do that in 4 key ways. So the first is that with 4 key principles in mind. So the first is trying to keep our eye on the goal of eventually eradicating poverty. VISTA understands, AmeriCorps understands, our project certainly understands that we're not going to end poverty with just with VISTA members, but that it's still important to keep that in mind as a goal, because there's a lot of important beneficial work that happens in the community that may not be focused on poverty alleviation. And that work is going to be more and better suited to a different branch of AmeriCorps. We also are focused, VISTA is also focused on empowering communities through this work. And so what that means is that they want community voice in the work. They want an approach of doing with instead of doing for. And where possible, AmeriCorps VISTA and our project really, really likes to be able to identify members that are from the communities in which they're serving. The mission of another core principle is to build capacity for organizations. So a VISTA member should increase the organization's ability to serve the community in a long-term way, not just in that 1 year when they're serving. And they should be creating sustainable solutions. So solutions that can exist when they have left. And so that we'll talk a little bit about what that might look like as far as activities, but that's an important framing. VISTA members perform activities that meaningfully improve the lives of low-income individuals and communities. So you'll notice on the application that we asked directly about how your organization serves these populations and how the VISTA's proposed work is going to improve or enhance or grow your organization's ability to serve those individuals. So that can be tricky because they're doing it through capacity building. So they're rarely going to be doing it by providing direct services to your clients. But if you can make an argument of how their work is going to build capacity, that's really helpful to us in thinking about how you might fit in the project. So we're going to watch a really short little video just about an overview of AmeriCorps, and a little bit more information about what the program is as a federal program.
So you have questions about AmeriCorps? Well, you've come to the right place because we're here to help. First off, let's clear up one thing right away. You might be wondering how to say or spell AmeriCorps. Sometimes people pronounce the P, but don't make that same mistake. AmeriCorps is alive and well, just spelled with a silent P. So think of Apple Corps or Core of the Earth. Now that we have that clear, what exactly is AmeriCorps anyways? AmeriCorps is simply Americans of all ages and backgrounds dedicating their time and skills to get things done. There we go. So how does AmeriCorps get things done? More than 80,000 Americans across the country join AmeriCorps each year, and all of them are tackling different problems in different ways. For example, AmeriCorps members help families attain affordable homes. They mentor students so that they stay in school. Perhaps there is a tornado, a flood, a forest fire, or a hurricane. AmeriCorps members also help communities recover from disasters. There's so many more things that AmeriCorps members do, but if we said it all, we'd be here all day. Why do we call them members, you ask? AmeriCorps members spend anywhere from 3 months to a year dedicating their time and skills to serve. They can volunteer with nonprofits, schools, public agencies, and community and faith-based organizations. And in case you're wondering, there are a few perks AmeriCorps members get, including money to pay for college, student loan deferment, training, living allowance, health benefits, and job opportunities with leading employers. Not too bad, right? All right. What's the purpose of AmeriCorps? Like the military or the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps is a way to serve your country. AmeriCorps members make Americans safer, stronger, and healthier, and they strengthen our communities. But above all, AmeriCorps members get things done. That's it. That's what AmeriCorps is. Learn more about AmeriCorps at AmeriCorps.gov.
So who are our VISTAs? Who are VISTAs typically? That's a question that we get a lot. VISTAs are at least 18 years old. There's no upper age limit, and they do not have to have gone to college. Sometimes because our project is based at a university, people assume that our VISTAs are Wake Forest alums. That is not the case of our project. The majority of our project they're not alums of Wake Forest. We usually have maybe 3, maybe 4 out of the full 18. And a lot of our members are variable in age, but typically VISTAs are at least 18 years old. Or they have to be at least 18 years old. They have to be US citizens or legal permanent residents. It is a federal program, so they have to pass a background check. That's a federal background check and a Social Security verification. And then we look for VISTAs that are going to meet the knowledge, skill, and ability requirements that are set by the sites or requested by the sites. Our VISTAs serve full time, and they make a 1-year commitment to that service. Although VISTA members can renew for a second year, they can actually renew up to 5 years, but very few people ever do that because one of the primary incentives to VISTA is the education award, and typically, and you can't get that after the second year. So typically folks kind of back out after that second year. And this is really meant to help springboard folks into what's next. And so it makes sense that we would kind of expect a 1 or 2 year commitment. So let's hear a little bit more. This is a really short video, but I wanted to share it because it gives a better description of who VISTAs are and what they might be doing across the country. The previous video was about all AmeriCorps, right? So this is specific to members of VISTA.
I stayed in my hometown in Montana.
I went to Arizona.
I went to New York.
I helped create a program that pairs veterans with service dogs. Now, these veterans are succeeding with the help of their rescue dogs.
I worked with pregnant women struggling with an opioid addiction. Now they're having healthier pregnancies and healthier babies.
I developed an after-school program for at-risk youth. Instead of dropping out, these kids are staying in school and have dreams of going to college.
Go across your hometown.
Go across the country.
Go where you're needed.
Where will you go?
So I mentioned that a lot of our sites or a lot of our members are local to Winston-Salem. So whether they are from here originally or have moved here and live here now, that tends to make up a good amount of our VISTA our VISTA members. There's a lot of different reasons why members serve. Typically, this is something that site supervisors are interested in because they really don't make very much money. But members might serve for a variety of reasons. National service can be an opportunity to build professionalized skills and competencies, an opportunity to formalize community involvement or leadership. So we've had several members of our project throughout the years who are already volunteering or doing some sort of community organizing in Winston-Salem, and VISTA offered them an opportunity to formalize that volunteer leadership that they'd already been exhibiting. An opportunity to gain experience in a field without an advanced degree. So we have VISTAs who maybe have an associate's degree or who are interested in pursuing degrees in social work or behavioral development or things like that. And they don't have those yet, but they can gain some experience in the field before they've invested in that degree. It can be a way to earn money to pay for education, a way to access federal employment. All VISTA members receive 1 year of federal non-compete status if they successfully complete their year, which means that they're able to apply for federal jobs as if they're already federal employees. And we've now had several VISTA alums to go on to work in the federal government because of that benefit. It can be a good story to tell for your gap year. So we end up with a good number of kind of younger, early 20s students who maybe are taking a gap year between high school and college, or taking a gap year between college and what's next for them. And this is a great way to spend that year. It can be a reason to move to a new place. So I did VISTA because I wanted to move to DC. And I was looking for a position that would be exciting for me there. A lot of the jobs I was finding in nonprofits were at more administrative kind of like assistant jobs, like more like greeter jobs and things like that. And I wanted to do capacity building work. And so VISTA offered that opportunity for me to move to a new place and do that kind of capacity building work. And then it can be a resource for career pivots. So we have had typically VISTAs that are older, that are in later. So I'll talk in a minute about the 20 to 29 age group is the largest representative age group for VISTA, but we have had VISTAs in our project who are in their 30s and their 40s, and a couple who were older than that in their 50s or 60s, and we're thinking about reestablishing themselves in a new community or in a new career. So who are VISTAs? The two most represented racial groups in VISTA are white people and Black or African American people. So 53% of VISTA members are white, and 22% are Black or African American. 68% are women, which notably has actually gone down considerably since the last time they did these numbers around 2015. I just redid this, and it's that percentage has gone down because AmeriCorps become more diverse from a gender perspective. 69% of VISTAs are between the ages of 20 and 29. So again, it's not required, but it's reasonable to think that you may have a member that's in that age range. So generally newer to their field, newer to professional work, which is also something we ask our supervisors to be mindful of, is just then the role that you may have to play as not only a supervisor, but more of a coach or mentor. 93% of VISTAs are experienced volunteers. So it is unlikely that any person that is going to be serving at your site, if you are a host site, would never have served in the community. And 62%, as I mentioned, nationally are local recruits. I will say that with the challenges of affordable housing in Winston-Salem, our number one best recruitment strategy is, at least, especially in the last 2 years, has really been to try to focus on local individuals who are interested in being members. So what are some of the benefits that members receive? They receive a living allowance, which is paid directly to them by the federal government. VISTA members did receive a raise, a significant one last year, but unfortunately that living allowance hadn't changed in quite some time. So they went from $13,000 a year to $15,000 a year this year. So we ask they get paid bi-weekly. We ask our supervisors just to be mindful of that, and just to know, kind of within the work culture and the work environment, that they are being paid pretty low. And to think about ways that you can support your VISTA member. Even though that stipend is low, there are other benefits as well. First of all, the living allowance is not considered income, and there's a federal law that prohibits it from interfering with a member's existing benefits. So VISTA can actually be a really beneficial professional next step for individuals that receive federal assistance for housing or food or childcare benefits, because the living allowance is not, or disability, the living allowance is not allowed to interfere with benefits you're already receiving, so that you don't have that benefit cliff effect that is pretty prevalent otherwise. It is another major benefit is the education award or the end of service stipend. So the education award is almost $7,000 that can be applied to your current debt or your future schooling. And AmeriCorps done a lot of work over the years to create a pipeline of universities and colleges who are interested and willing in matching that education award. And we've seen that with our project. Many of our students, or our members who've gone on to be students, especially grad students, have been able to get a match to their education award, especially because the majority of them have gone into adjacent fields like public health, public policy, education, counseling, that sort of thing. In addition to that education award, members' loans, federal student loans, go into forbearance during their service time. So that means that they're not paying the interest, the government is actually paying the interest during that time. Other benefits include professional development, VISTAs receive health benefits. They do not receive health insurance, but they do receive health benefits, which basically is a reimbursement structure that helps to pay for that helps to reimburse members for their out-of-pocket medical expenses. Similarly, the child care benefits can be applied for as well through AmeriCorps. Those benefits are paid directly to a kind of validated, authorized child care provider. Members receive mileage reimbursement for travel that's related to their service. So not, to and from home, but maybe from your organization to other locations if they have to travel as a part of their role. We have worked with Aramark at Wake Forest to develop a benefit for our members. They receive 30 meal swipes per semester to the dining hall at Wake Forest, which is quite nice. I pay for meal swipes to the dining hall because it's cost effective and a great salad bar. But they receive that as part of their service. And then they also have free access to the Wake Forest gym and well-being facilities. So VISTAs are responsible for engaging in capacity building activities, and we'll talk more about capacity building in a bit. They need to create sustainable projects, so projects that can exist beyond their service to the organization. They need to perform activities outlined on their volunteer assignment description, which I'll mention later. They meet with their site supervisors at least weekly, and they support efforts to gather data and information for our project. So VISTAs are asked to manually report their or do mandatory reporting around their hours each week, their work each month, and then to work with their supervisors on quarterly reports. So I've mentioned capacity building several times. Capacity building is kind of a trendy term, I think, in funding and nonprofit circles. It can mean various things. This is what it means to AmeriCorps. So to AmeriCorps, capacity building is tasks and activities that expand scale, reach, efficiency, or effectiveness of either a program that your organization has or the organization overall. So examples could include fundraising, volunteer recruitment and management, new program development and assessment, system or infrastructure development. So maybe you build out a volunteer management platform or you build out a donor management platform, and partnership development. This is compared to direct service, which is the act of providing services to the identified recipients or the client. So that would be directly delivering meals to clients, staffing a shelter or a pantry, delivering supplies, providing the tutoring and mentoring services on an ongoing basis, providing counseling services, running errands or staffing events that don't have anything to do with the pieces that are on your VAD, right? That is the critical difference. And basically what AmeriCorps wants to see with VISTA is that all of the activities and goals on the VAD and in our overall description of what the VISTA member will be doing are focused on capacity building. That doesn't mean that that's all the VISTA does. So the VISTA could still do a little bit of direct service if it relates directly to the capacity building work that they're doing. So for example, if it's the VISTA's responsibility to recruit the volunteers to staff the pantry, and then through either their mistake or a volunteer's no-show, they don't have anybody and it's happening in an hour, that VISTA member can pinch hit, they can step in, but it should not be a regular use of their time, and that shouldn't be their plan, right? They should be seeking to build the capacity to support that pantry long-term. So I've mentioned the VAD, and you do not need to really know much about the VAD right now as you're applying. But what I want you to, the purpose of this is for you to see that this is a pretty a pretty highly regulated federal program, and it's a specific thing. It requires organizations and sites to be able to project out, usually about 6 months in advance, what an entire year of work is going to look like. So if you are chosen as a host site, we would take what you put in your application for the activities that the member would be doing, and then we would co-develop this a volunteer assignment description that we would then need to have approved by AmeriCorps in order to place a member. And it gets pretty in the weeds. So it gets pretty in the weeds around identifying the goal, but also identifying usually between 3 and 4 key objectives, and then between 2 and 4 or 5 member activities that go under that key objective. And this VAD really becomes the guiding piece to the VISTA's year. And so while it can be hard to be able to project out for a coming year, particularly in the middle of a pandemic, it's something that you need to be able to do in order to be a good fit as a full year VISTA site. There's more flexibility in what the members do with summer associates than there is with full year VISTA members, because with summer associates, they typically have a VAD that applies to all of the summer associates or interns. Some of you who've been with SNP for a while remember they're interns, but we had to change that language because we're not supposed to call them interns now that we are able to have summer associates. So anyway, for a full year VISTA member, you need to be able to have this clarity around what they're probably most likely going to be doing. And it's pretty final when we submit the VADs in the spring. It outlines the specific objectives and then the activities that the member will do under those objectives. As a site supervisor, we expect you to do a few things. So sites, host sites for VISTA have to be 501c3 nonprofits. We need you to orient your VISTA. So while we will do a lot of orientation, we also rely heavily on site supervisors to orient on site. You're required to participate in supervisor meetings and in site visits. We conduct annual site visits, and AmeriCorps can decide they want to conduct a site visit of our project at any time. We ask that you dedicate time to meet with your VISTA each week, that you are willing to serve as a supervisor, coach, or mentor to your VISTA, and that you ensure timely submission of the member attendance documents, the reports, and the cost share payments. So as a part of AmeriCorps, I mentioned that the federal government pays the members directly. So then we, as the sponsor, pay a cost share of that overall cost. And we ask that our host sites help to contribute to that cost share. And the request that we make is for $1,500 to help us cover the cost of your member for that full 12 months. So it's only paid once, but we ask that you are responsive to that request. So there's a lot that goes into VISTA member management. And I think one of the largest benefits of having an AmeriCorps VISTA member through an intermediary site like ours is that the OCCE takes on a lot of the responsibility for member management, but we need your support on it in some key ways. So the first is that onboarding, orientation, and training are key to member management and member development. AmeriCorps provides some that is required before they begin. Then we in the OCCE provide 1 to 2 days of training to onboard them and orient them to the project. But then they come to you and you are responsible for onboarding them to your organization. So all of our VISTAs are onboarded as affiliate staff members at Wake Forest, so they can have ID cards and can avail themselves of resources that are available to staff members. But if you have a formal onboarding process with your organization, if someone needs to be cleared or needs to have a ID card made or needs to go through HR, we ask that you take responsibility for making sure that that happens. I'm not going to necessarily know your HR policies and how you onboard volunteers and staff. We also ask that you think about what onboarding looks like, what you would like to see if you are coming to work for your organization, and go out of your way to help the VISTA to feel welcome and to connect with other members of your team. VISTA does not expect, AmeriCorps does not expect that it's an immediate hit the ground running. In fact, they build in about the first month to 6 weeks is expected to be orientation and training. So the VISTA will likely start doing their work during that time, but it's just a reminder to all of us, the VISTA included, that there's a lot you have to learn when you begin doing community-based work, and that you may not be prepared and likely will not be prepared to just immediately start if you haven't worked with the organization before. We ask that sites provide the bulk of administrative support when it comes to space and supplies for the VISTA. So the VISTA needs somewhere to sit. That's more important when we are not all working in some sort of hybrid context. Maybe that will end one day, maybe it will not. But right now, VISTA members are allowed to teleserve. And so they can work from home, but many of our VISTAs are looking for opportunities that allow at least some opportunity to come into a physical space. And it's always possible that AmeriCorps could remove that allowance that really came about because of COVID. Many of our VISTA members have their own equipment. If they don't have what they need, like a laptop, we ask that you try to provide it. And if you can't provide it, we can provide it to members. One of the biggest ways that members or that supervisors help to support our members is through good supervision. So guidance, support, and coaching. We do all of the attendance and leave monitoring. So we have a process for members to submit their hours and also to get approval for time off. They VISTA members have 20 days of time off in the year. But we also encourage you to use your your system. So if your organization has a particular way that folks are expected to check in or out, you can certainly ask the VISTA to use that process. If you have a particular preference around when you need to hear if someone's going to be out of the office, obviously if it's not an emergency, we encourage you to share that with them. We do not get in the weeds on that kind of granular level and how the VISTA's time is managed. We do ask that you verify their hours to the best of your ability on a monthly basis. They have to submit them weekly, but we do that to make sure that you don't see any red flags, because we submit the sponsor verification form every 2 weeks that basically ensures that people are serving that are on our roster. Because of that, we really rely on VISTA site supervisors as a bit of a backstop. If you're not seeing someone, if you're not hearing from them, or you have a hard time reaching them, it's important to us that you're able to communicate that. So that we can make sure that they're okay, first of all, and second of all, so that we can make sure that the project is compliant. We already talked a little bit about service-related transportation, but if your organization is requiring, if you're requiring a VISTA member to travel as a part of their assignment completion, we ask that you reimburse their gas mileage. There is an emergency funds advance that is possible through AmeriCorps. It is a small amount of money. It's not a ton, but it is possible for members who have emergencies or qualifying situations. Typically, that needs to be something like a natural disaster, may not even qualify. The one member that we have successfully been able to secure funds for was a member whose home flooded, apartment complex flooded during his service, and he lost all of his possessions. And so we were able to get some emergency funds for him. We work together to provide professional and personal development, but most of our sites appreciate the fact, all of our sites appreciate the fact that we take on responsibility for providing that professional development for VISTA members. And we just ask that you're willing to provide the types of professional development that, again, are necessary for the VISTA member to complete their project. And then we ask all our members and our sites to make sure that we're always acknowledging that members are VISTA members and that AmeriCorps is the funder and sponsor, and that the Office of Civic and Community Engagement's project is what they're serving through. And we ask you to do that, one, because AmeriCorps ask that of us as a funder, but the other reason is that it is a really helpful tool in helping potential members, potential host sites to navigate to the project. AmeriCorps is not as well known as Peace Corps, and so sometimes people haven't heard of it, particularly individuals who may not have gone to college yet or are not planning to, right? And we've had more than one VISTA member navigate to our project because they were a member of a community being served by a VISTA member, and that's how they learned about the project. So it's just really important to us that that is visible. So some things to keep in mind just around policies and what VISTA members can do and what they can't do, and how we resolve member issues. Because as much as we want to pretend that there's never an issue, it's people. So there's always going to be some challenges, some issues, and things that we have to address. So the first piece I would say is that the VISTA Member Support Unit is a national service hotline that VISTA members have support to have access to at all times. They're open during business hours, but they're good at calling back. And this is a great hotline because it really is the most beneficial way for a VISTA member to get assistance on anything that has to do with them personally. All of that is going to be protected and private, and I'm really not going to be able to support to do much about it because of the VISTA's privacy. But if they have issues with their benefits, they have issues with their payment, they have questions about using their federal non-compete status, that hotline can help with all of that. So what's prohibited? What can you not do with a member? So a member cannot replace the duties of a staff member. And what that means is you can't say, well, we're not going to rehire our tutoring coordinator because we're going to try to get a VISTA. That's not allowed under AmeriCorps. VISTAs, again, should be building capacity. They shouldn't be replacing someone else's job or role. VISTA members cannot perform political or religious activity, and this is not negotiable. And this is a pretty broad definition of political and religious activity. So through their role as VISTAs, they cannot do anything that is or appears to be partisan from a political perspective, advocacy from a political perspective, or religious or proselytizing. As individuals, our VISTA members are welcome to be religious. They're welcome to have political beliefs, but they can't do that. They can't cross those formally with their VISTA service. An example of that that might seem innocuous is in the past, I had a member who was religious and who was led to VISTA work and to community-based work because of her religious conviction, and wanted to pray to open up a event that she was planning as a VISTA. And we had to talk about the fact that while it was certainly okay for her to want to pray as a person to open up an event, that because this was a formal event that was part of AmeriCorps, and because of this kind of prohibited activity, that wasn't going to be okay. Another example is around the census and get out the vote events. So VISTAs are not allowed to do anything around, we're not allowed to do anything around the census, and they're not currently allowed to do get out the vote campaigns because those are perceived as being partisan. They cannot manage or apply for AmeriCorps subgrants or grants. If you, so a prohibited activity for you as a host site is any form of nepotism. So say your cousin is a long-term volunteer for your organization and you've been looking for a way to formalize that role and you think, oh, I'll just make her my VISTA. You can't do that. So there's also particular situations in how and when VISTAs can be exited from the program. So you cannot terminate your VISTA for any reason, and we cannot remove them from the project. What we can do is make recommendations that a VISTA member be reassigned to a different site within our project or be removed from our project entirely because of their behavior or because of an issue. The inevitable decision maker is AmeriCorps. And so that's just an important thing that I want to name up front in letting folks know that the member is serving at your site, but you are not kind of fully able to make every decision that has to do with their service. A member issue that we help to respond to as well is inability to perform full-time service. So a member may need to exit, may be encouraged to exit in addition to some of these other prohibited activities because it turns out that they can no longer perform full-time service. When members apply, they have to check a box to say that they're available full-time, and they're allowed to hold a second job. They're allowed to be in school part-time, but only so far as they're still able to work full-time for their primary project site. And sometimes this has happened more frequently recently than in the past. I'm not sure why, but a VISTA member may decide that they're going to take another role as their part-time role that is in the middle of the day, is exactly when they're supposed to be at work. And we have to have a conversation, or at their primary site. We have to have a conversation with them just about that's probably not going to work, right? That they have to make a choice about whether they want to exit or stay in the program. The final kind of member issue that can crop up are just personal and medical issues. And we really try to support members in the ways that we can. The VISTA member support unit has resources available to support members. During COVID, members could take leave, and emergency leave is still a possible benefit for members if they have a qualifying event. So, but they have to have used up their existing time off. So there's a lot of resources that we can make available to members, but sometimes member issues exist that are either personal or, in the context of the rules of the project. And we have to work together with sites to think about what then happens next. So how can you, what can you do as a VISTA sponsor to support your VISTA member? So you can provide housing assistance or a rent supplement. You can provide groceries or grocery store gift cards. You can provide clothing. Often we have VISTA members who are young and they're not making very much money, and so they may not have a professional wardrobe. And a few agency logo apparel shirts can go a long way. You can provide access to facilities, and you can provide training and conference registration. It's just important to think about being equitable and supporting all VISTAs if you have multiple VISTAs serving with you, and important to think about how the VISTAs kind of have some equitable resources in the context of your office. So our project in the last year has had a pretty big impact even during COVID. So in 2020 and 2021, which is our last full project year, our VISTAs collectively secured over $300,000 in cash resources, new cash resources for their nonprofits. They engaged over 1,300 volunteers. Those volunteer hours were around 3,000 hours. It's a little lower than in previous years, but part of that is because they engaged volunteers and then it was hard to find places for them to serve. And then they launched 137 new community initiatives. So a lot of that was kind of rebranding existing projects that their organization had, maybe relaunching them in a vertical space, but having a decent amount of impact collectively. So the next steps to being a VISTA host site are to submit your application by midnight on January the 31st. Then we will notify sites that you will be included in our application to AmeriCorps, and that renewal application will go in on February 4th. So you should expect to hear around the beginning of February if you are going to be included in our application to AmeriCorps. The included sites will start doing a couple things. So first, we have to conduct a site visit with all of the sites that are part of our project, and we have to finalize VADs. And so in the time that we're waiting to hear back from AmeriCorps about the approval for our continuation, we'll begin doing some of that work to make sure that we're ready once we receive the approval. And that is because we have a little bit of a tight recruitment timeline. We recruit April, May, June. We need to identify all of our members by the end of June, and so that they can be sworn in August. And then if you were a site supervisor, we would require you to participate in training, and that would happen in July. So that is the end of the presentation overview of the project and the next steps. I am going to stop sharing. I'm also going to stop recording.